Welcome, Hilltopper fans, to Inside Hilltopper Athletics. This is our first podcast of the season, hopefully a format that we'll utilize not only in football, but several of our other sports. I'm your host. I'm Lynn Ullom. I'm the athletic director here at West Liberty University, and our first guest on our first show is our head football coach, Roger Waialae. Roger, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great time of year every year. We're so excited. First football game coming up, and we're going to talk a lot about your team and your thoughts maybe in a second segment, but I'm going to kind of put you on a spot here before we get into that. Although Roger is still a young man, Coach Waialae, he is the longest tenured head coach in the Mountain East Conference, 18 years, is that correct?
Yes, 18 years here at West Liberty as a head coach since 2005, so I'm entering my 18th season.
Yeah, 18 years as the head coach, and for those that know Coach Waialae, he was a long tenured offensive coordinator before he stepped into the head coaching role. First question I have for you, Coach, is being now in this seat for 18 years, and we all wish we had the ability to hindsight. What do you know now that maybe you didn't know as you approached the first game of the season back in 2005?
Well, the biggest thing is a lot of times when you approach the first game and you're going, you just mainly focus on that opponent. And that's what we did early. All we did was focus on the opponent. Now we focus on what we need to do, meaning our offense, learning the philosophy behind it, learning the blocking scheme, so no matter what defense we're seeing, we'll be able to block. Same thing defensively. We're going to see a lot of different formations, and probably in the first 3 or 4 years, all we did was focus on that first opponent, and that was it. And so we've kind of focused on us during camp more than anybody else. And this year's a little bit different because we don't know what the team we play Thursday night is going to do. We have a guess from the past of where the other coaches were, but we really don't know.
Right. And we'll get into the Clarion side of it, but I liked your point about preparing more for yourself, finding out who you are as a team. I know the million years ago that I used to coach that I was so opponent-driven early in my career. We watched tons of film and things like that, and I finally woke up one day and said, we usually win or lose depending upon how we played. Not so much what the opponent was doing to us or the challenges that they were bringing. So I definitely changed at the end of my career. So let's talk a little bit about the game itself. Is the game changed much in your 18 years?
It's changed incredibly, probably more than, not only did COVID change it, but it was evolving. Just when you look at the blind side blocks, a lot of the rules to protect the safety of things, the positioning of the officials have changed, what you can get away with, what you can't get away with. So, a lot of those things has changed, but I think it's for the good. Whenever you're trying to protect the players, I think that is good. This year's their big influence on cut blocking. Before you could cut block 10-2, now it's in the box 10-2, and the offensive line, their initial charge has to be a cut. If it's not a cut, then they can't cut later. A lot of times defensive lineman will kick step, or offensive lineman, will kick step on the pass protection 2 times, and then the defensive guy has his charge and then cut him. Well, that's illegal now. So they're doing a lot of things to try to protect the players, and that's probably been the biggest change. Football, and I think pretty much all sports pretty much comes full circle. Everybody was running the option and they got away from the option. Well, then now everybody's running RPOs. All that is option football. The blocking schemes are the same. Reads for the quarterbacks were the same, but instead of pitching it, they're throwing it. And so those things have evolved, which has changed the defense. The defense is, primarily you just read keys. Well, now everything is false keyed, so now you got to read run fits, you got to read plays. It's made you play more cover one than zone in certain situations. You can play zone in definitely pass situations, but you can get caught on the RPO, especially if they're reading your linebacker steps up for a run, you avoided a zone, and that's what the RPO game is all about.
Then you give up the big play when
Right.
people are out of position. Getting back into the health and safety part, and you talked about how the rules have changed. Tell us a little bit about how the practices have changed in camp, meaning back again 100 years ago when I was playing football or whatever, we had 3-a-days, and then it went to 2-a-days. Tell us a little bit about how that's even changed.
I tell the kids all the time because, they get tired faster, I think. I said, hey, when we showed up first day, full pads, 8 o'clock, you met with the trainers. 9 o'clock, you were in full pads. 2 o'clock, you were in full pads. 6 o'clock, you were in uppers. So it was 3 practices a day. Every practice was full contact. The contact started in the first drill. Usually we went out and stretched and we started Oklahoma drill. Well, now all those are obsolete. You're no longer allowed to do those drills. So it's changed the complexion as far as making it, you have to make it more mental. Right, during camp, meaning, instead of practicing 3 days a day, 3 times a week, we meet, we lift, then we go out and practice, and then we got to give them 3 hours off in between each session, and then we come back at night and meet again, and then we start the whole cycle over the next day. And then the first 2 days are in helmets, the second 2 days are in shoulder pads, and then the third 2 days are in full pads. Then you got to give them a day off. And before, we used to go 21 straight days, 14 straight days. And so, earlier in my career, and this is another change, I never felt we were quite prepared for the first game, just because old school wise, the way I was coached is, we will make sure you're prepared, and you had triple the amount of practices sometimes. And so that has really changed. You take the 7th day, you can't do anything with them. And then you start again on the 8th day is when you're allowed to first have contact, and then you can have contact, every 3 or 4 days. You're limited on how many days you can actually have contact. And we try to be smart. We pick periods. We don't go for extended period of times when we're live full tackling, because what I don't want is our defense to go in the first game and haven't tackled all camp. And so this camp, probably more than others, because of the big turnover on the defensive side, we have gone live a little bit more than we usually have in the past.
Yeah, and that's always, you play I think as coaches, we're all scared of the injury bug. Mm-hmm. So then you start weighing in your mind, how much are we tackling too much? Are we going to get somebody hurt? And we know at the Division II level, due to the equivalencies, the scholarship equivalencies, correct me if I'm wrong, Division I, they have 85
Correct.
Full equivalencies. The maximum at Division II is 36.
Yes.
So you're not sometimes set 3 deep, 4 deep at a position. Let's transition out of that. You can see our beautiful facilities behind us. Talk a little bit about how these facilities have evolved, how we've gotten funding to secure it, and then maybe finish with the weight room as well.
Well, and, obviously the field is named after the West family and Gary and Flip West, most importantly. And Gary did include his siblings into it. But, what they've done for the whole campus, not only football, not only the weight room, but the soccer complex, everything that he's done, Gary's had a vision on how it could help the school. Not only just football, not only just soccer, not only just athletics. He wanted to enhance the whole appearance of the institution and bring it up technology-wise in the athletic world. And, one day I think on the plane he read where your athletic facilities are the front step to your institution. And he really took that to heart, and so he's upgraded everything, and he's seen a return on his investment as far as students at one time being up and being able to attract better student athletes. And, our field itself, this is a second generation Mondo turf that we've put in. He wanted to put in the concussion pad under the field, and it's helped immensely with the downsizing of concussions here at West Liberty.
Yeah, and Gary and Flip, what they've done, and their entire family is just, we couldn't even express in words what they've meant to our institution. And you said it far transcends even athletically. It's the College of Business and other areas. So we couldn't say thank you to them enough. Tell us a little bit about the weight room, which we moved into, the Panhandle Performance Zone.
Yes, well, I talked to Gary about the weight room back in 2010. We were down in Florida. He had the coaching staff down for a retreat, and he asked something in the weight room. And back then when we were talking about the weight room, I'll be honest, we were just talking about how it enhanced football. And then the second time when we went back for the weight room, probably 10 years later, 9 years later, it was about the athletic department and how it can enhance. And it's not your scholarship kids you're going to get. But for us to survive as an athletic football team or any other sport, you're going to need walk-on players to help you practice, to help get better and develop into scholarship players. And that's what the weight room would attract. Also, it made, let's face it, our female athletic teams more comfortable in the weight room. It's a lot cleaner. It's a lot more, and I don't want to use the wrong term here, but you can get a lot more development now in the weight room. We can fit more people in here. We're not, and when you look at the size of the weight room, about lifting in one or two groups isn't about the strength and conditioning staff having shorter days. It's about the student athletes having shorter days and being able to mix in academics, to mix in the football side or the athletic side of things. So all those things played a factor into Gary making a decision in the Panhandle Performance Zone. It wasn't just because we want to upgrade this. This is not, up to standards. I mean, my philosophy on the weight room, I can lift in my garage, and if I'm doing the right things, I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to help prepare for injuries, help heal from injuries. That's what the weight room does for our athletes right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit on it, and I'll just conclude with this. Gary and Bucky Koff were very instrumental in kind of the lead gift to get the momentum to that. And then our great partners, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration, stepped in and got the naming rights for what they did to help us finish this project. So we also want to say thank you to them. Coach, tell me a little bit about, got a couple new staff members.
Yeah, well, first of all, we promoted Greg McGee to offensive coordinator. He had been the quarterback coach for the last 2 or 3 years, and reason being is he sees football the same way I do, offensive football. And we kind of laugh sometimes because he'll have something drawn up, I'll have something drawn up, and it's the same thing. And so that's how much we think alike, and even in play calling and all those things, it's meant a lot. Then Coach Spigarelli, who was a successful high school coach at Belair, and then he came up here, and then he went back to Belair to be the head coach, and it was a perfect spot, perfect timing, everything, because he knows our defense. While he was at Belair, he was up here talking with our staff, both offensively and defensively, almost every year. And so he understood the nuances of our defense. Our safeties are being coached now. Before, your safeties got coached by one guy, and the linebacker also coached the same guys, and they'd go over to the secondary coach. So that's meant a lot to us. And then on his second day here is Marcus Spencer, who has a pretty good story if you want to talk to him. He's a kid that walked on, or kid, he's a man now, walked on in Alabama, made the all-freshman team, then earned a scholarship, and then played in the NFL, played in Canada, and has been a lot of places. But he eats, sleeps, loves football, and he understands what it's brought for him. I think the maturing factor with him, with our secondary, because let's face it, the secondary is probably one of the hardest positions to coach, because you probably get exposed more than anything else, and being able to mentally overcome that or not be in that position and play the next play, you really need somebody that has been in that position and done those things.
Yeah, you got to have a short memory, because
Right.
I know it's a cliche, but those DBs are on an island a lot, and
Yes.
if you misstep on the island, it's going to be 6 points the other way.
Right.
So,
And a lot of times, too, it is if a safety blows the coverage and the DB is supposed to be in the short zone and he ends up chasing the guy trying to make a play, trying to catch him, it looks like it's the corner's fault, and vice versa. It works both ways. So not all the time when they get burnt, it's a lot of times, like I always use this one, is in interceptions. I throw a million interceptions as a quarterback. But a lot of times it's not necessarily the quarterback's fault. He might have got a bad route, a wrong route, those types of things. Last year we had a pick because a wide receiver took 2 more steps than he was supposed to. If he takes the 3 steps opposed to 5, it's a completion. So all those things matter, and cause and effect. And watching film, it's easy to break it down. But when you're watching the game live, you're sitting there guessing, well, whose fault was it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes as coaches, we get on the phones. What happened? What did that? But hey, listen, next play, let's move on, and we'll watch film tomorrow.
Hey, I can relate to that because I'm covering the game in the booth on our TV station, and I don't know exactly what happened sometimes. I don't know. The receiver didn't run his route. We're just looking at the end result, so I'm probably as guilty as anyone. One last thing in this segment. ESPN or whoever's covering the game had the audacity to schedule a WVU Pitt game the same night that we open up. Now, I know that's crazy, but there will be people drawn to that game. So do you have a winner? Who's going to win the WVU Pitt game?
One of the SC transfer quarterbacks. I don't know. I really don't follow it enough to, I think it's going to be a great football game. I think they're evenly matched, but, they're going in with some unknowns. WU has a new offensive coordinator, installed a new offense, has a new quarterback there. Slovis and both of the quarterbacks are proven. Daniels played at SC. He did start at University of Georgia. And, when Daniels got hurt, Slovis is the one that went in and won the job from him. So, when you get a hot hand on that situation, you're probably going to stick with it if somebody. And I always tell our kids the Wally Pipp story, which they say, hey, who's that? So,
I know who it is.
Yeah, but a lot of them don't. They're like, and then I say Lou Gehrig, and they're like, who's that? Yeah. And so that's probably, you asked me in the first segment, that's probably the biggest change is when I talk about things and the kids go, well, who's that? Never heard of him before. So, but going back to it, I think it's going to be a good game. I do think that Pitt does have the upper hand defensively right now. WVU lost a lot of transfers and a lot of kids in the portal that, a lot of times when you look at kids leaving the portal just to get an opportunity, they were getting kids that were playing and starting at there that left. And so, it's going to be, I think it's going to be a good game, but I'd have to give the upper hand to Pitt right now. And, not to offend the WVU fans, because I am somewhat of a WVU fan since I've moved here. But, I hope WVU wins. But, being my professional opinion, I think Pitt has the upper hand because of their defense.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. And our game's a little bit of a backyard brawl as well, West Virginia School versus PA. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we get back. But right now, we're going to take a break.
My name is Jonathan Howard. I am an associate with Premier Commercial Real Estate Services in Morgantown, West Virginia. So I double majored in marketing and entrepreneurship at West Liberty. I also had a minor in geography because I figured I wanted to go into the real estate realm. Originally, the whole reason I actually got an internship with Metro was because of the fraternity, connections in the fraternity, and that's actually how my initial first step to getting down in Morgantown was actually through the fraternity. The reason I like to jump out of bed in the morning and come to work is probably because every deal is so different. In the residential world, I was dealing with a lot of people that wanted to buy a house, but in the commercial world, dealing with a lot of businesses that are either starting up, they're expanding, or maybe they're just really big, massive nationals like Aldi, Michael, some of the big names we have down in Middletown that I'm kind of getting to watch and learn how these deals come together and how they work. I'm Jonathan Howard, and I'm proud to be a Hilltopper.
Welcome back to Inside Hilltopper Athletics. I'm Lynn Ullom, joined by West Liberty University head football coach Roger Waialae. In the first segment here, we talked a little bit about everything but your actual team in the game. So let's start right there. You've been in camp now, practicing 3 weeks. What's your thoughts?
Well, thoughts are I think we're much improved. We're much more healthier. Knock on wood, we still got 2 more practices before the first game, but we're much more healthier leading into the first game. Our marquee players are here, all except one. But we should be ready to go. I feel more, you want to try to talk yourself into things. You coach, that you're more prepared, and I think we are more prepared. We just got to see if what we coaching-wise thinks are our strengths will be our strengths in the game, and if we can play off of those strengths.
Well, before we get into the strengths, let me ask you kind of a weird question, and this is one this isn't a question that I know, and I'm trying to elicit an answer. I'm absolutely curious about this. You've been doing this for a long time. We all have thoughts going into the season as a head coach. How accurate are your thoughts?
For the most part, I think they're very accurate. There's such a fine line between winning and losing, and that's what, on this level especially, and in this conference especially. I mean, if we can keep our marquee players healthy, I believe we can play with everybody. But you can't, like going into last year, it was 2 days before the first game, I'm sitting there, I went home, told my wife, I said, we're in trouble. We lost our best player offensively. And you can't replace those types of things. And when you stay someplace long enough, things go full circle. My first 8 years as a head coach, phenomenal how we were able to stay healthy. And doing the last 8 years have been devastating. The injuries that we've suffered. So obviously right now I'm pretty upbeat because we're fairly healthy with the kids returning and the kids we're counting on. We do have a couple kids newcomers that we're counting to make an immediate impact that haven't seen the field yet, but that's always going to happen.
Yeah, it's you're right. The injuries just, you can't predict them, and no matter how much we want to control everything, you can't prepare for them either. You just never know really what is going to happen. All right, let's talk about what have you seen either individually or position-wise. What would you say are maybe strengths going into the season?
Well, and on paper and watching it, I think our strengths right now, it has to be the offensive line when you have 4 starting returners that have played together for 3 years, and then Neely plugging in at the center spot that has gotten 4 starts over the last 3 and played in almost every game. And so that has to be the backbone of the offense. We're going to have to rely on them kind of early, and where like last year probably our weakest position or lack of depth on the team was running back. Now that's one of the strengths. When you got Quincy, you got Tyler Moeller that's right now number 2 that gained close to 900 yards, 800 something, and over 100 receiving. So, and then you got Anthony Barmer. Asbury's finally healed from his injury. So, we go 4 or 5 deep there, where last year it was like, okay, what are we going to do now? Let's get into empty. Let's do it, where we had to invent the wheel a little bit and move some wide receivers back there. Now we're solid there. So that's the biggest thing that stood out offensively. Obviously, we had a pretty competitive quarterback battle between Divin, Garcia, Sherry, and Dunleavy. I think Divin's done enough to start. I think Garcia's done enough to play right now. So you might see both of them. It's kind of going to be a game-by-game decision. And it's all about winning, and well as I do, that position's decision will probably have 95% of the effect on whether we win or lose.
Yeah, it's I can't think of a position in sport that has more of a direct impact on success than the quarterback position. Mm-hmm. And all you have to do is look across the country and see coaches who have tied their fortune to the quarterback play programs. You're at the mercy of that. And this is a little bit off topic, but it's been kind of weird if you've been following college football about how many coaches have not announced the starting quarterback, or even something as unusual that Harbaugh came out at Michigan this week and said, we're starting this guy in the first game, we're starting the other guy in the second game, and then we'll make a decision after that. Is that unusual, do you think?
No, I think that's the way the game's evolved because of the putting them in game situations on practice and seeing how the bullets are flying. Your true evaluations are going to be during the game against outside components, because when you're practicing against each other, everybody tends to learn each other's tendencies, whether they want to or not, and even as little as lining up alignments and, his foot's way back, this one, he's running this, his foot's, so I don't think that's wrong at all to do that, because he's going to have 2 games to do a true evaluation, because in game situations is where you want to see it. And what gets overlooked at the quarterback position is not only the play, but getting you in and out of bad plays. coaches are guessing. Let's say I've called plays for a million years. We try to go with tendencies of what the defense is going to be in. Well, if somebody breaks their tendency and they line up in something different, or they show blitz when they never blitz, and you got to have a quarterback and look up and say, "Oh, I need to get out of this. This is the best play against this defense," and that's probably the biggest decision making in of all of it. That's why Tom Brady's been more successful. Not because his arm strength, not because he's able to protect himself. So he's able to study film. Oh, this one's coming. I need to switch the protection this way. And so I think that's what gets lost a lot of times. People think they're just saying stuff to, do things. He's constantly changing the protection to protect himself first, and then that gives him the ability to get the ball off. But I think that's the biggest thing, and why he's lasted so long is because he's been able to somewhat decipher the defense and understand which blitzes they're coming, because they come from everywhere, and that they're fast enough to come from 15 yards off the ball. Well, in our division, they scoot up. They're probably 5 to 3, and 2 steps, 2 yards makes a difference on safeties, and that's what we try to get our guys to do. Is the safeties will tell you the story.
Before we talk about the defensive side of the ball, tell us a little bit about Quincy and the injury that he's overcome to get back.
Well, not to jinx him, but he's better now than he was before. He's running better. I don't know if him missing it for that year made him want it more, but he's making more cuts. He's running harder. He's fast. He's playing faster than he has before. He's improved his focal point a couple times in the wide open. He dropped balls. He's not dropping balls. He's taking care of the football. So, but the other day in practice, he got through in a hole that was maybe a foot wide and hit it and got to the second level, and he has the capability of making somebody miss. But he wants it as much as anybody, and understandably so. That whole group has done a good job of working together, understanding, Tyler Muller's in a tough situation where he started 10 games last year and he led us in rushing, and then all of a sudden Quincy comes back. Well, obviously his carries are going to diminish for a year.
Yeah, that's but we need the depth for sure.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about the defensive side of the ball.
Well, on the defensive side of the ball, the biggest question mark is the defensive line. When you lose, right now it's 8 out of the 9 guys you played all graduated. And so David Gilchrist returns up front. He was all conference last year. He's improved his game. He's worked on it all summer. John Brown, who played a lot and rotated in the first game before he hurt his knee, he's back starting. Delano Marcellus. We redshirted last year. That probably halfway through the year would have gone into rotation. Then we're looking for Cam Rice to do big things that came in from WU, and he has. He's been able to play end the 3 technique, and he plays with a passion for the game, and he plays hard. And then Edwin Linares Rivera is on the other side, and Damian Brown has improved a lot. So, we're probably going to start off rotating probably 7 to 8 guys, and hopefully, get to 10 or 11 guys where we were. Probably the kid that's made the most plays going back to last spring and now has been Spanky Dixon. His mom wants him to be called Zachary. He wants to be called Spanky. I don't know why, but no. But I'll just call him Dixon. But anyways, he's made more plays in the pass game and the run game. Hopefully he's bought into the Mike position, because he's probably a more truer safety. But in the schematics of our defense, we call it the Will Backer. It does a little bit of everything. He has to cover in the pass game, sometimes inside slots. He's got to be in the run game, and he showed the propensity to do that. And then we also have Tyson Fasuamanu, who we redshirted last year, and then we got Woodrow Hughes and Sam Cirksena that all have valuable game time, and then transfer Jay Johnson. So we do have some depth there where, sometimes in the past we only had 3 guys ready to play. We got 5. In the secondary, probably the biggest improvement has been made by Chris Wilson, if we want to be honest. He was a freshman corner last year. We moved him to safety. He reads the quarterback really well. He's got his hands on a lot of footballs that normally we don't get on. Cheyenne's a mainstay because of the run play and at the weak safety, and then Trent Crawford returns at the nickel. that started for the last 3 years. And then the corner, we have a lot of experience now because we had to play a lot of kids. A lot of kids. Jordan Demas had to play last year in the last game when we had 39 guys out, some from COVID, some from injury. So it was different to have that much experience returning and quality experience. Kids that we had given scholarship money that, you would hope most years you could redshirt, but I'm glad we didn't because they got the valuable experience. But you got Pritchett and Mitchell on the outside with Sean Stevens and Demas in the mix for starting. So we have options where, a lot of times going in the first game, well, that's all we got. So this year we have some options that we can play and see how they play out. And, you talked about Harbaugh. There's a couple positions on this team. It's going to be like, okay, we're going to start you guys, see how you guys do this week. And then the next game we're going to start you to see how you do because, again, in practice, the evaluation, once you start going to each other for so long.
Tell us a little bit about the third phase, special teams.
Special teams, first time in my career. Probably since the first year. The first year we had Brandon Bright that all he did was long snap, but he would have probably started at linebacker if he had ACLs in either knee, but all he could do was long snap, so he did. But I brought in 2 long snappers that all they do is long snap. And so we feel comfortable with both Maggio and Sabella. They'll probably rotate in. The kicking game, Justin Kaplan, is, I was worried about his leg strength, and yesterday he was kicking them from 53 to 55 yards and making them. And during kickoff, he's been kicking some of them out of the end zone with no wind and some into the wind. So Curry has to step up as the punter. That's probably the biggest question mark. He has a big leg. But whether he can stay focused and get the ball where we want. And that's the hard thing in our kicking game because we area kick so much. When we try to cover areas, we've got to get the ball to where it's supposed to be. And so if, he struggles a little bit, I was pretty impressed with Jamie Diven punting. So if he ends up going out and punting, you're going to see some different things from us.
Well, if Diven's out there, I want him to throw and not punt.
Well, that's what I mean. You're going to see some different things. So, but, and people laugh at me all the time, but one of the lost head that people take for granted is the holder. In college football and in the professional ranks, you don't have a tee to place it on. And, being 3 inches off a spot, 2 inches forward, 2 inches back means a lot for a kicker, especially if they haven't played a whole lot of soccer. So a true freshman probably going to hold Ben Turner. Ben Turner's probably going to hold for us with Dunleavy and Sherry that have been in the mix there. But that's probably one of the most important things that I've grown to know is everybody takes that for granted. And then, I watched, a couple of our kicks last year. I'm watching the tight tape and his finger's right here and the ball gets put back here or up here. They take their steps for a reason. We got to get closer.
Yeah, attention to detail. All right, well, let's wrap this up. We are facing an opponent that our new SID, Jacob Davey, told me today. It's Clarion. We haven't played in 41 years, so obviously we haven't seen them up close and personal. What do we know about Clarion?
Well, we know their head coach has been a successful head coach on the Division II level. He's been an assistant on the Division I level at a few different places, but he was successful at Kutztown to get their program turned around, then went to Arkansas Tech and had some playoff runs there, and then went back to being a defensive coordinator in the Division I level, FCS level. So, but what we expect to see is a clone image of our defense, a 4-2-5. I think they'll play more cover 2 than quarters, and what we expect in the coverage wise. When he was at Kutztown, he didn't blitz a whole lot. He played very vanilla, but he has listed a defensive coordinator that blitzed a lot where he was the defensive coordinator. So, that's the biggest unknown. But again, we had to prepare. We need to learn our offense inside and out so we can react no matter what they put up. Quarterback's got to get us in good and bad situations. But, the hardest part to simulate will be for our defense is that, we're going to see the fly sweep series, which is the offshoot of the old wing T, but out of the shotgun and using multiple formations. So I think, looking at from the outside, Coach Segman that came from UC Davis, That's all he's run. He's got books, he's got videos. He's the foremost guy in the country on the fly sweep series. And so with the fly sweep, what's incorporated in that is a lot of wide receiver screens. So basically it's and I think he said it, I watched his podcast to try to learn about their offense, but in his podcast he said it's a smoke and mirrors offense. We want to make you think we're doing one thing and do another thing. So the quarterback's a transfer from Ullom. I think there's going to be a lot of quarterback runs built into the fly sweep. If they get you moving laterally, then they're going to hit him up. And they got a good running back. So, defensively, we're going to have to play responsible football, and it's another form of the option football, so to say, that the quarterback has some decision-making to make. Do I want to give it on the fly sweep? Do I want to pull it and throw the bubble backside? Do I want to run it up the middle? So they'll have options, whether Coach Segman can probably have it where the quarterback reads it, or he can probably predetermine everything. It's kind of going to be on their trust, and that's what we're going to have to figure out early.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. I thank everybody for tuning in and viewing our first podcast. I'll remind everyone we have a 6 o'clock kickoff on Thursday night at Clarion, and then we return home the following Thursday for another 6 o'clock kickoff versus AB.
Yes, sir.
Coach, thank you for joining us. Good luck, and let's get a win on Thursday night.
Thank you.